Imagine I'm your good friend. And I know how that sounds. Imagine a good friend walks up to you and it says, hey, I have here, there's a check. Some of you recognize this. Check. And we used to exchange money with them. Hey, I have here on this check, made out to you from me, everything that I've ever saved. Everything that in my working life I've been able to sock away, to put away, I have for you. And this is because I love you, and because I want to honor you. This is how the best way that I know that I love you and care about you is that I have this check with everything that I'm worth, and I want you to have it. This is because I love you. I care about you. And that's how much. Now, in this moment, you'd probably say, giving it to me would be better. Taking your money, everything you've earned, and lighting it on fire, ripping it up, throwing it away. I get the gesture, but there are better ways to show that you care about me. And yet, that's what we're going to read today. And so if you have your Bible with you, go to Mark chapter 14, and we'll get there in just a moment. I want to welcome you again to Palm Sunday, being here together. We're so glad that you're here. But as we enter into Holy Week, Easter week, I'm so glad you're here to worship with us today. To consider this week, if you've celebrated Easter before, maybe starting today, you'll see Easter with fresh eyes in a way that maybe you never have before. Now, next week on Easter Sunday, we're going to finish up the Gospel of Mark, and for some people, you've really enjoyed it. Other people, I've had people say, that was a little challenging, and I say, which part? And they say, those words from Jesus that you read, and there's not a lot I can do about that. So, but what I want us to understand is that we've only done so much of it. So today we're going to read Mark chapter 14. Last week we read the story of Jesus predicting his death for the second time in the Gospel of Mark. And when he does so, he essentially interrupts his followers, and they're arguing about who's the greatest. And he's like, there couldn't be kind of a further disconnect between what I just said and how you're taking that to mean. And so from Mark 9 to Mark 14, where we are today, you do miss a few things that I want to highlight for you. The one thing that we're going to miss is Jesus predicting his death for the third time, as just a way to kind of really tell you this is happening. This is what I mean. He has Palm Sunday, which is today, which is what we're celebrating. It's when Jesus rides on the donkey. We heard that earlier. Thank you, Don. Jesus rides on a donkey, which is a way of declaring himself king. Now, it doesn't look like a normal king. Normally, they would find the biggest, prettiest horse they could, and Jesus is riding on a miniature donkey, as a way to think about it. I mean, imagine his feet are scraping the ground as he rides this thing. And so it's kind of one of those things that's like, I know you're saying you're the king, but it just doesn't look right, which, as we've seen throughout the Gospel of Mark, is how it's been the whole time. Jesus, it's not quite meeting our expectations, the things he has to say, the kind of king he's going to be, the way that his kingdom will be. And he even shows that with how he enters Jerusalem. And then lastly, what I want you to know, we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, is Jesus takes his followers and they go onto the Temple Mount, and up there they watch people give their money. They hear people give their money. And it's not until a widow with 2 mites, think 2 pennies, when she gets up there and gives, that finally Jesus goes, that one. Pay attention to that one. She has given the most. She gave everything. And so in that moment, with all of that in mind, Jesus is in Jerusalem, which is meaning the story is coming kind of to its crescendo. We read this, starting Mark 14, verses 1. Now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. Okay, so what you have here are the chief priests and the teachers of the law. That is to say, the Israelites, the Jews with the most power. They're at the top of the religious ruling class. And they say, we got to get rid of this guy. Mark tells you when they say that, and when is important because of what we read in Deuteronomy chapter 16. We read this. This is back in the Old Testament, many years before this. Observe the month of Aviv and celebrate the Passover of the Lord your God. Because in the month of Aviv, he brought you out of Egypt by night. Sacrifice as the Passover to the Lord your God an animal from your flock or herd at the place the Lord will choose as a dwelling for his name. Okay, so early in Israel's history, they are enslaved by Egypt. For 400 years, the people of Israel are enslaved. And God, through Moses, leads them out of Egypt. It's called the Exodus story. They exit Egypt. And it's after that they're putting together the law that you read something like this. That God says, you know the Passover that helped free you from Egypt, every year you need to celebrate the Passover. You need to remember what's happened. In fact, remember might be the most used word in Scripture. Remember. And if you read the Old Testament, what you'll find is that they do not remember. They forget over and over. In fact, we forget, don't we? I mean, we forget. We'll have a great moment in a moment like this, and then we'll go out, we'll go to work on Monday morning, we'll yell at the drivers in front of us, and man, I need to remember to be more like Jesus, you know? How soon we forget. And so every year they are taught to celebrate the Passover as a way to remember. In fact, if you read through Deuteronomy, you'll find that there are 3 times that they are called, they are asked to celebrate something, to remember something through a festival, and they need to do so by going to a specific place. We just read this. Offer a sacrifice where my name will dwell. So during the Passover, Jews from all over the Mediterranean would go back to Jerusalem to celebrate. And so what you see is that in Jerusalem, the population would swell to many times its normal size. This isn't to say that everyone would make it. It costs money to travel. You're not working. You're paying a lot to get there. And so just like today, not everybody takes vacations like everybody else. It costs money. And so not everybody is going to make it, but those who can do. They take a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And so picture this. Jerusalem has a lot more people than normal there. In fact, this is going to happen here this summer, here in Dallas-Fort Worth. We have the World Cup coming, and so they're saying expect a lot of people to come in. In fact, maybe you've had this experience too. Somebody already reached out and said, hey, we'd like to turn your house into an Airbnb. We'll give you somewhere between $5,000 and $20,000. And I say, well, you know, that's a pretty big gap, so let's choose 20 and then we'll talk, you know? And what we're going to see is that it might be difficult to do things around our city because there'll be a lot more people. And so because of this, everyone's kind of on edge in Jerusalem during these times. The chief priests, the teachers of the law, they're on edge because they don't really want anything to happen. Though they are an occupied people, they're at the top of the food chain. They have power. The Romans are for sure on edge because you have a lot of people coming. They are the rulers of an empire. The Jews are an occupied people. And what you have are thousands, maybe 1 million Jews going to one city to celebrate what? Their freedom, which they don't have. So all these people are coming to a place to celebrate. Remember the time that God freed us? Only they're not free. The teachers of the law, they want to kill Jesus because they don't want anything to change. Even though they are occupied, the status quo serves them. Jesus is going to be crucified for a number of reasons, most of which is because he threatens the power of those who have it. They don't want anything to change. This has been true throughout human history, that those who have the power don't want to give it up. They don't want anything to change. And so they need to somehow quiet Jesus forever because they don't want him to incite a riot. What better time would it be when a bunch of people come to Jerusalem for someone to stand up and say, remember freedom? Remember what it was like when we were in charge? Remember when we ruled our own kingdom? That because that they misunderstand what Jesus means, they think he wants to actually establish an earthly kingdom. So they say, we need to find a way to remove him. And so what they're going to do is they're going to say, we need to find a secret way to do it. Well, at the end of this section, verse 10, we read this, that their prayers are answered. Verse 10, then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, he goes to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So Judas watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over. Mark gives us these two pictures of a story. It's called an inclusio, is that he wants you to see what happens in between. These are the same stories. You have the Jewish leaders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and you have Judas, one of the insiders, both looking for a way to kill Jesus, to get rid of Jesus. And Mark gives you the story like this so that you will pay attention to what happens in between. Mark tells you this so that you will say, now look at what happens in the middle, because that's what should happen. And before we read what happens there in the middle, I want you to recognize something, that Judas has quite a reputation that he earned, frankly. But notice what happens here. Judas is painted as someone who is greedy, and he does what he does for money. But what we read in the Gospel of Mark is not that they go to him and offer him money for Jesus. He goes to them, and only after agrees to betray him, they offer him money in exchange. Judas is not motivated by finances, not at least according to Mark. Judas, out of his own free will, approaches them to betray Jesus. So what you have is you have one group of people who should know better. The chief priest, he has risen to a level he should know. He should be close to God. He should understand the law and the scriptures. Judas, he should know. He's been on the inside. He's been there every step of the way. All 3 years, he's seen every miracle. He's seen every teaching. He should know. In between this betrayal, this misunderstanding, and this scheming, we see complete devotion. We read this. While Jesus was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. So Jesus here, he's about 2 miles from Jerusalem. It's not far. You can see it, on a clear day. And he's here reclining. He's at a table sharing a meal at Simon the leper. Now, I don't know what was going through Mark's head when he wrote this and why Simon is known as probably the worst moment of his life. Simon the leper. Imagine if you were known as John the unemployed, or Jane the cancer patient, Joe the recent divorcee. I mean, he sits down here and he goes, you know who this is? It's that Simon. Simon the one who had leprosy. Simon the one who probably Jesus healed. That's probably why they're close. Simon the leper, known by the worst moment of his life. And in walks this woman. What Mark does is really quite clever. At the beginning here, you have the chief priests, the teachers of the law. They know them by name. They know exactly who it is. That's kind of like royalty that you can kind of track back. You know who the chief priest was before that one and before that one. And then you have Judas. What you have here on either side of this story are men who are known and named, and they don't understand what they should be doing. They don't have it right. And in the middle, you have a woman who's acting honorably, and she's not named. Now, do you remember going to malls? You remember these places with a lot of, stores? And you would go there, and if you're like me, you probably park outside a department store, and you use it just to kind of get through. And they're really smart about what they put on they know that you're just walking through, and so they put certain things there. And if you take the left, you might walk by the shoes to where you see something that maybe later you'll catch it on the way out. But if you take the right path, or whichever, you're going to walk past the perfume section. That if you don't walk fast enough, you end up with a headache. You know what I'm talking about? And so you go there, there's all those ladies who are going like, would you like to try this? Or would you like to try that? And again, you can see the haziness, right? There's like a fog there. And it just has like this smell. I mean, how could you choose a perfume? You smell them all at one time. It's, in some ways, not very appealing. Now, this moment is a beautiful moment, but for a second, just consider what happens here. It's a small home, Simon's house. I mean, it's not like our homes today. It's probably much smaller. It's just an intimate few, probably Jesus and his followers, and maybe Simon's family, having a meal. And in walks a woman, and she's probably known by them. That's how she gets in. And it's in this small space that, no, she doesn't smash the jar, though that would kind of be fun, take a whole new jar of cologne and just smash it and see what happens in your friend's house, not yours. And she probably doesn't do that. She probably just breaks the jar in half somehow, and she pours it out, and you can see it going over the head of Jesus. And you see it first, and then the smell hits you. And it's probably suffocating. I mean, that much all at once. So Jesus, something is happening here that not only do you see, but you smell it. You might have even heard it. That she's doing something here. She's showing something. She's showing her complete devotion. She's showing love to Jesus in a way that breaks all logic and common sense. She simply offers it. Verse 4, we read, some of those present, imagine, maybe it's Peter, some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. Just like the chief priests and the teachers of the law, just like Judas, this woman is preparing for the death of Jesus. She is doing her part to get Jesus ready for burial. He's going to tell us that in just a minute. And so she has taken what she's heard from Jesus and she's going to go about it a different way. Other people have heard and they want to hear from what they've heard from Jesus. They want to put him to death. She's heard from Jesus and she wants to help him on his way. Now, what you see here is this could have been sold for more than a year's wages. What it actually says here is this could have been sold for 300 denarii. 1 denarii is what you would give to the average worker for 1 day's worth of work. This bottle of perfume was probably worth almost a year's worth of work. They were not on salary. You did not get paid unless you worked. This is a very wealthy woman because she has this. So what you see here is people watching this happen. They know what this is. This is what you read, pure nard. This thing is probably imported from somewhere like India. They don't have Amazon 2-day shipping. This is quite expensive to get. And she walks in with this, a year's worth. I did a quick Google search. What does the average American worker make in 2026 in a year? Around $65,000. So imagine you watch somebody walk in with something worth around $65,000 and they immediately waste it. They ruin it. They use it all up. I don't know how much of this perfume would have typically be used to bury someone, to prepare a body for burial. But surely not the whole thing. And as soon as she does this, it's no longer usable. There's nothing you can do to capture it back up. I mean, at this point, it's all falling to the ground off of the head of Jesus, and the only thing it's good for is maybe the dog to roll around in, It's gone. A year's worth of money, of savings, of how long did she have to put aside to afford this? And now it's just gone. And they say some things that you and I might think, is this really the best way to use this? I mean, my first thing that I immediately think is like, couldn't we just use a little bit of it? Why all of it? They have some reasonable questions. I mean, couldn't we just sell it? I mean, aren't there better things to do with this? They're quick to think, surely this isn't required. surely this wasn't necessary. What we definitely see is that they are not thinking about Jesus. They're thinking about themselves. Because what I think is happening here is I think they're going, this is a great gift. Is everyone going to be required to do this? This is offering so much. Do I have to do that? Do I have to give something like this too? They're thinking about what they might have to give up, what they might have to do. And ultimately the question behind that is this worth it? Because I'll surely give up a bunch for things that are worth it. Is this worth it? What they're doing is what we all do. They're spiritualizing this moment. They're looking for an out, for an excuse. We could have sold it. I mean, think about the poor. They're not thinking about the poor. They're thinking about themselves. They are using the poor as an out, as an excuse for themselves. They're not thinking about the poor. They've been worried about who's greatest. Who's going to get to be 1A and 1B in your kingdom? They're doing what we often do when we don't want to follow Jesus' example. We spiritualize our selfishness. We don't say, God, I don't want to give that much. What we say is, well, God, you want me to be wise. You want me to save some. I should be a good steward, right? We don't say, I'm uncomfortable with that level of devotion. We say, shouldn't we be balanced? I mean, don't we need a good work-life balance? Enough for you and enough for me. We don't say, Jesus, this act makes me feel inferior. We say, what about the poor? Was she even thinking about them? We try and spiritualize our stinginess to make our lack of devotion seem spiritual, seem like we're more mature. Jesus sees right through it. Verse 6, he says, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want. Which I think is his way of saying, you haven't worried about them before. But you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. In these stories before, you have the apostles who are so concerned about who's going to be the greatest, who gets to be the first. And Jesus says, you're worried about your legacy? Her story's going to be told. Here we are, March 2026. We're telling her story. We don't even have her name, but we know her story. She becomes, in this moment, the model of discipleship. She shows them what it means to be all in. 2 chapters before this, Jesus takes his followers up onto the Temple Mount. And it's there that they watch the people give the money. And I should say they hear the people give money, because the way that you would give money at the temple is that there would be these big copper jars, and you would give your money. They didn't have paper money. They had metal, and they would put it in. And what would happen is that anytime, a high roller rolled in, you knew it. You could hear it. So you could, by your giving, tell everyone just how giving you were. And so Jesus takes his apostles up there, and they just watch this unfold. And it's not until the widow with her 2 mites, which would not be heard. Their metal was so cheap, it's so thin, it wouldn't make any noise, that Jesus says, she's given the most. This is what it looks like to be a giving person. This is who you should be like. And that moment is connected to this moment. These unnamed women that Jesus says, this is who you are to be like. This is what it looks like to give. This is who has honor. What I love about this moment is that she, yes, is anointing Jesus for his death and for his burial. And it's as if she's heard the 3 proclamations, the 3 prophecies that I am going to my death. And you know what? She believes him. She believes him. When Jesus has said, the Son of Man will be killed and rise again in 3 days, she says, I believe you. How can I assist you? This story is told to us today to challenge our own faithfulness, to rather than be faithful with some reserves, to give without reserves, to be faithful with complete abandonment, to have a reckless love for Jesus. On the other hand, you have Peter and people like him, who, when Jesus says the Son of Man will be killed, he pulls Jesus aside to rebuke him. No, that's not the path for you. This woman believes and is going along the path with Jesus. If the way is the cross, then I'm with you, Jesus. So we want to move from the mindset that Peter has to this mindset of this woman, to embrace Jesus and his calling fully, and his way is our way. The question becomes, as we read this, are we ready for a similar commitment? So sometimes as we come to a teaching like this and we ask, how do we live this out? And I think this is the kind of teaching that you only through prayer and the Spirit can live out. And so this week, as we enter into the week of Easter, I would ask you to prayerfully consider where this teaching might touch you and might move you. So prayerfully consider these questions, these ideas. The first is to identify your jar. What is most valuable to you? So turn to God in prayer and say, God, just highlight for me what is most valuable to me. I mean, is it my time? You know, I've met people in this same church, in this church, who have said, I'll write you a check, but I won't give you any of my time. I mean, would you protect your calendar, your schedule before all else? I'll give you money. I'll give you anything, but I'm not going to give you my time. Is it your finances? Is it you saying, you know what, I'll give to you to a certain point, God, but not in a way that changes my life. You don't get control over my full bank account. You have yours, and the rest is mine. I mean, is it your career? That you say, you know what, I am one person on the weekend and one person during the week. That this is core to who I am, my identity, and what I am about. And Jesus, you don't touch that. This is the American way, the American dream. I mean, is it your family? You go, you know, I'll take them to church. I'll try to teach them the stories, but that's as much as you get. I'm not going to subject my kids or my spouse to the way of the cross, to a way that might cost them something. At the end of all this, is it just your comfort? Jesus, I'll follow you, but only to a place that, until you ask me to be uncomfortable, to give of myself in a way that I'm going to maybe be lacking. I'm going to have to give something. I would challenge you to turn here, number 2, turn to Jesus and prayerfully, truthfully ask him, am I willing to break the jar? Jesus, am I really willing to give you everything? I mean, this is what we do in our baptism, is we say, I will die to myself to follow you. I will give you everything. Jesus, is it true? Do you see me as someone who would give you everything? This is a challenging prayer. And lastly, would you be willing to break the jar? Would you be willing to take that thing that might be most valuable to you and say, Jesus, I hand it to you because you're trustworthy. I'll give to you the thing that I hold most dear because I can trust you with it. The world might call it reckless. The disciples will call it a waste. Jesus says this is a beautiful act. Break it. Don't hold anything back. Give to the one who can renew that gift. Give to the one who is king of all things. Honor Jesus with your best, not just your leftovers. In the late 1800s, there was a missionary named Amy Carmichael from Ireland, and she felt called to the mission field. She did some time in Asia, didn't feel well, so she went home for a minute and was encouraged just to stay there. And she said, no, I'm going back. And so she went to India. And she said, I'm going to go to India for some time, and I'll be back to visit. And 55 years later, upon her death, she had never once left India again. She never had time or the luxury of a furlough. She gave up everything, the culture she knew, her homeland, her family, and she went to India. She felt called by God to do so. She started an orphanage there for kids who had been exposed to some kind of prostitution. She established a home for them to escape that. 75 years later or so, that home still exists today because of the faithfulness of one who was willing to give everything. We hear a teaching like this, and we hear Jesus say, "This is beautiful." And for us to live into it is a difficult thing, and it requires a level of trust. To say, "Jesus, I will give this to you, but is it worth it? Can you promise me that it's worth it?" And Jesus, I think, with love in his heart, just says, "I will give you the life that is truly life. All these other paths you're taking are just imitations. They're cheap knockoffs of the life that I have to offer you. I'm trustworthy." And to Jesus, you might say, "But it looks like death. It looks like I have to give up something that I'm going to experience some level of death for it." And this week, we celebrate the one who was put to death and then found alive 3 days later. The one who says death is merely temporary, but you can trust me with this. There is something on your heart that you know, Jesus, I'll let you touch any part of me, but you can't have that. And Jesus this morning is saying, trust me with it. Give that over to me, and I will show you life that is truly life. This kind of path can only be walked in prayer, and our shepherds and their wives will be around the room to pray with you today. We have moments in Scripture when the apostles turn to Jesus and say, "How is this possible?" And Jesus says, "With God, all things are possible." This thing only happens through prayer. We believe that in prayer, God will continue to form us so that we can offer him our full selves. So today, as we close, I would encourage you to start down this path on this week in prayer. If we can help you in any other way, won't you come while we stand and sing?